There was one interview when Mr. Jaishankar was asked about the same, and there was some silly question that was just a funny question posed on him regarding burgers, hamburgers and pizzas and all like that when you go to Western nations. And the savior reply that he just gave on that stage was something like that: I will see India becoming the world's power when you see the golgappas and tikkis in some Western nations just in place of hamburgers and all like that.
This is a time for us to engage America, manage China, cultivate Europe, reassure Russia, bring Japan into play, draw neighbors in, extend the neighborhood, and expand traditional constituencies of support. Sounds tough, right? Says the Honorable External Affairs Minister Hon.S Jaishankar. And today we are here to dive deep into what the Gen Z, the touchbearers of the future, understand from such concise yet heavy quotes in this episode of Young and Global. Joining me today are 4 vibrant and thoughtful students from Delhi University, including me. I'm Akansha, your host and producer of this podcast, a young mind, and so are my 3 beautiful friends present here.
Rise and shine, everyone. This is Vaishnavi Verma from Lady Shram College of Women, University of Delhi, currently a 3rd year economics student.
I'm Abhinandan Krishan Kaul, and I am a BA History and Political Science graduate from St. Stephen's College, University of Delhi.
Hello everyone, my name is Naman Verma. I have completed my graduation in BA Hon.S Political Science from Hindu College. Currently I am pursuing my Masters from Department of Political Science, University of Delhi.
Well, let's start with something broad and fundamental. So what do you think foreign policy means to you?
So for me, the dynamics of foreign policy have now changed since the last decade, for sure. So earlier it was just the high level conferences and some pacts and some agreements that were being signed. But today, the last decade has changed it a lot. So it's about the major component, public diplomacy, involvement of citizens. Their perspectives are what that matters in today's foreign policy around the world.
I really agree with what she's saying, because ever since I believe 2017, 2018, since we had Reliance Jio and social media, I mean a lot of people started to use smartphones. So this has actually democratized foreign policy in a way, and I think it's a two-way street, because on one hand, we are all getting information about what's happening on ground in different nations and about what our nation is doing about it and what our leaders think about. And at the same time, we can also provide feedback to them, because through social media, we get to interact with the foreign dignitaries as well as our leaders. So it's really improved, and I think public participation, as she very rightly mentioned, has increased a lot, and as well as the awareness and the interest that people hold in foreign policy these days.
Rightly said. I associate foreign policy in terms of diplomacy. So at first instance, it might appear that how can you completely associate foreign policy with diplomacy? But if you see that foreign policy is a set of objectives, principles and strategies that a country uses in order to manage its international relations with other external nation states. So foreign policy appears a kind of theoretical framework. Then when it has been implemented effectively, it gives us a beautiful pragmatic outcome, that is diplomacy.
All right, that was so beautiful. But I think what matters, or like how I will explain foreign policy, will depend upon the impact and what exactly is the origin of foreign policy. The way I see it today is based on how influential and how it is the manifestation of the ancient values and the epics of our country. So if I have to talk about, why Bharat matters by Hon.S Jaishankar, he beautifully mentions epics like Ramayana, Mahabharata and Arthashastra, from Mandal theory to Shadgan Siddhant. I feel like the contemporary Indian foreign policy touches a lot upon the manifestations of the ancient values. And I think at the end of the day, we as Gen Z, we wouldn't really, watch Mahabharata with parents. And I think at that point of time, it becomes very important for us to understand and know about our roots, right?
I truly believe in our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji's vision that we should have Vikas with Virasat. So it's like development along with your embracing your culture and your tradition. So I think that should be the way forward, not only in diplomacy and foreign affairs, but in every other sphere, whichever sphere we are focusing on.
I think in a way, like, we are able to understand the saga of the rising powers, the way we are transforming this vision into actually the actions that we are doing on the global landscape. So anything you would want to touch upon the fact that how we are rebalancing the multipolarity, the globalization, and the vision and the stage India has in the contemporary census.
Surely I would like to give one very recent example. So there have been theories back in times that whenever something happened in a nation, that was actually accounted for some foreign power's hand, and there was a foreign hand involved in all of this. But if we see that today's India has that much of capability that it can definitely not take this excuse that there is an involvement for some uprising because of foreign and all like that, because today we have become equal global players around the world in all these circumstances and situations that are happening. So this foreign power hand play is definitely out of India's excuse list now, but of course that's an achievement, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that as well, because I think that there is a sense of pride now that has come up. So earlier it may be possible that there were no foreign powers, but people were very vulnerable and they used to believe that there would be some foreign power, and the political things used to happen. But now there's a sense of pride which has come in all the people when we see reels of our honorable foreign minister S Jaishankar ji, and replying and giving it back to the Western counterparts and other nations who doubt us. So there's a sense of pride that has come in the last 10 years, and that's why I think people don't agree that there can be any foreign hand that meddles us around. We are independent in our truest sense.
I think India has been born in a very tiring and a challenging international context, and it becomes one of the important parameters to its aspiration to become one of the great powers, which have been dated back to the several millennia of our ancient civilization. So if we see that our new notion of Vishwa Guru that we preach the world is not something new, but it has been ancient in nature. Plus it could be, I think, best understood in terms of 5 T's, that is tradition, technology, trade, talent and tourism.
So I think what we mean by all these arguments and then in totality, the way we dignify and present the Western powers in such a superior format. And I think then the partnerships with different countries then becomes very important. So let's talk about that.
As you say that we are moving away from eurocentrism, so I think the entire focus is now coming on the Indo-Pacific region, right? Because it's not only just economics and sea lanes of communication, but this is the world's most populous region. So the West is now looking at this region for markets as well. So there are a lot of things at stake, and I think that it's India and the Indo-Pacific region which is now the future, and it will determine the foreign policy actions of most of the nations in the world.
I think the very fact that India and the Indian Ocean comply together, I mean that India's broad coastline makes it name the sea itself by the name of the country, speaks a lot in this case. And in case of India, it has been a very complex and a diverse thing also, because the kind of partnerships and the kind of friendship India holds with the diverse countries, I think is commendable. There can't be any other country right now who have been friends with such a diverse nations that are actually fighting amongst themselves, and still they are being friends with India.
And when we're talking about Indo-Pacific, I believe that the kind of relationships we share with other nations around like neighbors like Sri Lanka and many others, but the major reason why these Western powers are collaborating with India and India's say in this region is becoming the most appreciated and the most heard is because of I guess the influence it holds over all its neighbors, and also to counter the rising powers and rising global threats.
So while we are talking about economic power, let's also talk about the soft power, the way we are actually controlling different sort of media and whatnot. So like when you can take example of yoga, Ayurveda. So what do you think about the soft power that India is possessing right now?
Okay, so there was one interview when Mr. Jaishankar was asked about the same, and there was some silly question that was just a funny question posted on him regarding burgers, hamburgers and pizzas and all like that when you go to Western nations. And the savior reply that he just gave on that stage was something like that: I will see India becoming the world's power when you see the golgappas and tikkis in some Western nations just in place of hamburgers and all like that. So So the way these westernization, this complete westernization theory has surrounded the globe, we see that there might be a day when we literally see Golgappas around the streets of US and UK, right?
And I think that's already in motion. I mean, if you go to Europe or European nations or in even the US, you'll see more Indians there.
Yeah, there are so many restaurants.
Yeah, I mean, you go and see, we see the big CEOs or we see the political leaders in the West. Many of them actually have Indian origins, and they stay true to their origins as well. So I think that's already in play.
Taking on to CEOs, I think then we can talk about the global workspace, right? So like how a very young mind like us can be more like in the most confident, personality, like seeing Sundar Pichai and like so many different people, Kamala Harris and so many people that we can take inspiration from, and how our policy allows us to have this confidence in ourselves.
I think that's a great source of inspiration for especially the Gen Z, because we are able to see them through social media and through YouTube and all the other applications in the web. We see what their life is, and we hear their interviews. They also, like us, come on podcasts and discuss about the struggles and challenges that they faced. So that provides us deep inspiration, I feel, and it also provides, as a sense of confidence and a sense of pride as well. So I think that that's a positive thing, because having a large diaspora, and especially in good places, will in the end it will benefit us. They still try to interact with the Indian diaspora because they recognize the importance that our diaspora has. And like for example, in 2016, Honorable ex-president of US, Donald Trump, he released an advertisement where he said, "Ab ki baar Trump sarkar." So he was trying to get hold of the diaspora as well. And even Kamala Harris also, who's the vice president and now she's in the race, she also tries to speak about her Indian heritage and the struggle she faced.
Also, I just came across this thing on social media itself, that there was some foreign university, maybe some Western university, where there was student election going on, and there was a lotus, there were their Indian colors, and they were literally putting up Indian agendas over there. So it's like just shows that Indian democracy, the ideal of elections in India is just becoming so famous that the people in foreign universities during their elections are taking up these things.
Yeah, even I think that in US, the turmeric was being used a lot, and then I think a company from there itself tried to patent it as a golden medicine. However, they were unaware that India has been using it since millions and millions of years, and it really belongs to us and not to them. So this notion of golden turmeric cappuccino latte, turmeric latte has been very popular these days.
Hey, that even happened with rice as well, right?
Yeah.
So they got
basmati,
patents, basmati rice. Definitely. But while we're talking about leaders, I think then it's also important to talk about the institutions that they are a part of, right? So let's discuss more upon G20, Quad, Brics, and how it is, getting away from the idea of territorialization. So now we have deterriotalisation, where Brics has like so many different countries of various different geographical locations, right? So anything on that?
I think one thing that made us so proud was India's representative Modi ji, just in the middle of the recent Health G7 summit, and there were so many posts going on Instagram and other social media platforms that this was the condition when some other was the prime minister, and this is where we stand today. So this actually tells us that we are now at the center of the global sphere, the global affairs, and we have a say, and that's absolutely the case, right? So even when we just talk about moving away from regionalism, so it was all about Western nations, their own alliances, but a nation from South Asia going there, taking the middle space, and every other leader, the warm welcome they give to each other, that's a different thing to be looking at, and that just shows that things have changed, and we have actually changed that, all right.
And I feel that adding to this, I also feel that this deterritorialization is taking place because as it's mainly because of, I think, factors like globalization, because we've realized that we are much more interconnected as a world, and post COVID we realized that with respect to supply chain issues, etc. So I think that now earlier the alliances were most probably they were guided by territorial proximity, and because most of the diplomacy in foreign policy, especially during the Cold War era, it was based and it was rooted in military power. But now we are moving on towards economic power and soft power, as we just discussed.
That's the case of globalization.
Yeah, so
basically.
because of that, now I think deterritorialization is taking place, and countries have realized that, you know, there are some countries which may be good in some issue, and then some other countries which will be good in some other thing. So it's better to, you know, collaborate on different issues so that, you know, you have a united front. And then we have global challenges like climate change and human rights, terrorism, which I think gained traction post 90s. So that's another factor which has led to the situation we see right now.
Exactly, like getting the presidency of G20 wasn't just enough a big deal, like it was something circular. India had to get the presidency one or the other day. Before that we had Indonesia, now we have the Brazil, but the way India used it as an opportunity was something very commendable. The way we tried to figure out the notion of global diplomacy, cultural diplomacy all over the world, and it also was one of the biggest celebrations that we had experienced after the COVID. So I think the way we used to celebrate Diwali, or we used to celebrate any other big events in our country,
was enjoying
the whole nation was enjoying. Exactly.
Yeah, in G20 they had the concept of Jan Bhagidari, that every citizen will play a role in the celebration. So that is why they had a decentralized, because if we see in the G20 that was held in other nations before India, most of the conferences etc were, you know, focused and centralized on in the capital, on adjoining area. But we had, you know, more than 250 locations across the states. So states and central governments collaborated, and, you know, this benefited a lot. I mean, I think it's a huge.
We
it was a huge
showed them the
celebration.
real India.
Yeah, so we showed them the real India, displayed it to the world as well. And
I think covering on to that, we also have the notion of self-India, self-reliance, make in India. But then we also have interdependence in the form of global institutions like G20, Quad and whatnot, right? So I think that's the beauty of the Indian foreign policy in this contemporary and status quo senses, that we are rebalancing and then balancing at the same time between our regional and the, you know, globalized identity. So that is exactly, I think, should be the point, that how beautiful it is, and how our country is working for the youth and our future basically.
And I think that this thing that, like, we have this kind of multi-alignment where we are able to balance our domestic needs and interests as well as whatever is required in the global forum. This also, I think, sort of has its origins in our ancient Indian philosophies, because in ancient India, pragmatism and, you know, righteousness and dialogue, debate, and having a balance between all the different relationships was emphasized upon, and we can see that examples of those in our epics as well as our ancient texts. So that is also, I think, a great thing to witness happen right now.
Well, I think it's time to get to the another segment that we are trying to focus here. How is Gen Z, or us young generations, we are engaging with foreign policy? What do you think is the role of media? And, you know, we see popular clips of Hon.S Jaishankar, and there's also a very popular UN reply of Sneha Dubey that went massively viral. So what do you think is the impact of it?
Alright, so one thing that I would be very much clarifying at the very beginning before we move on to the Gen Z and the policy. So there's one thing that today if you go out and just talk to someone, what do you want to do? Amongst us, of course. So people will have one thing to say. Earlier they were like, I want to go in corporate and do this and that. They will just tell you about some profession, doctor, engineer and all like that. But today people actually say, I want to go and work in public policy. So when they say that I want to go and work in public policy, it means that they are actually engaging themselves, asking and thinking that they are actually the part of the system which is going on. And the largest example comes from, you see that today whatever international conferences are going on, there are always a few seats reserved for students, for Gen Z. And I don't think that earlier that was a part, and our previous generation had this kind of an advantage. So that's where today's agenda in all these spheres is that you include these coming generations so that they are also a part of it, because there is a change in the mindset. But once these youth are other part of these policy making, this gap will be bridging, and that's why we will be able to work more to a policy which is adaptable and acceptable to all the people, all the segments, right?
That's very true actually, because earlier even I feel that I mean, as we were growing up, there was an age when people used to think that diplomacy and foreign policy, these conferences and all, it's all very boring. It's all boring stuff. Why should we'll watch cartoons or some movie or series.
Literally.
But now people are, I mean, the topics of conversation itself, it's not movies, it's not some film star, it's about S. Jaishankar ji, or it's about India's policy at G20, or what are the challenges, etc. So, I mean, foreign policy and diplomacy has become really interesting these days. And I think social media obviously has a prime role to play in what is happening right now.
The fact is, like, earlier people used to read a lot of, the Gen Z used to read a lot of comics, comedy and all like that way. But today I see some of my friends sitting together, just going through, just turning the newspaper and laughing so loudly, oh my god, what this happened. So they're just like, this thing is actually affecting them. They think that they are the part of it. So they are actually turning the newspapers and becoming sad for a thing that happened. Oh no, this means this will happen now. So this is the impact that is now. I believe that's because of social media, that's because of print media, that's because of the more resources we have today. But some way or the other, it is including us, and we think that we are the part of it.
Yeah, like even I feel that the Gen Z generation, or the Zoomers that we commonly call us, haven't lived in an era where we can see primarily just hegemony, or we can see just threat into conflict. So this has done a very good thing to us, is that we are more concerned with the issues like climate change, with the human rights, equality, sustainability, and the very fact that from the morning, the time we get up to the time we sleep, we are surrounded by technology. I mean, in a way, there has been a lot of misuse of technology also with the developments of AI and the IT, but at the same time, the way we are nowadays using the technology, I mean, something happens in a country, the next minute you get it on your phone.
Right.
This level of connectedness is making us a global citizen, a true global citizen, where we are really putting up our views, our thoughts, not just in our own country, but at the global level.
And this one more thing, that nowadays you see that people, youth from our generation, they're coming up just because of this technology and the availability, the skills they have, the IT and all like that. They're coming up, opening their own organizations where they actually want to work for the social change they want to see around the world.
And basically, to summarize, we are now talking about the influence the younger generation can have on foreign policy. And basically, what we just talked about is more in the form of activism, how we are able to present our own voice in front of different big institutions, and they are actually, eager to learn what we have to say. And that exactly is the reason why we are on this podcast today, for people to hear what does the younger generation actually think.
True.
So, to get more on that, what do you think are the other ways that we, as the young leaders or the young minds, can influence foreign policy?
Well, I think that first thing is that we have social media on our hands. So we can, with respect to anything that we feel strongly, we can use social media to amplify our views and our voices, and we can collaborate with youth across the spectrum with respect to that. Secondly, I feel that we have platforms where you can make petitions, like for example we have change.org. So if there's any global issue with respect to which action has not been taken by our nation, or whatever action our nation has taken, we are not in consonance with that, so we can upload a petition, and then we can use social media to amplify that. And then there are many think tanks that have emerged in the recent past. So we youth can engage with think tanks, and think tanks do have a huge platform, and policymakers, they have policymakers' eyes and ears. So we can, as youth, we can also express ourselves through these think tanks and these things. And at the same time, I believe that there are consultations also that are held, and with social media around, we are in contact, we are in constant touch with our policy makers. So if anything is there, we can obviously we can mail them, or we can just message them, or we can tag them with respect to whatever we want to say, and we can give our views, and they are very responsive these days. So I think these are a few ways in which we can, so we have great power at our hands, and I think we should responsibly use it. Right.
And even in the way like how MUNs are so popular with kids these days, not just kids but us you
Us
know.
also.
So model United Nations, we are trying to, just act like a delegate, have a proper, professional meeting, and the way we conduct MUNs. So even I think that is another way how like youth is engaging, but then also shaping the opinion of people around themselves, and at the most global level and like the international level as well. So
Yeah,
changing dynamics of time have changed that way that today you see a 5-year or a 5th standard grade or 5th class student going as representing USA, India, UK in their MUNs. They speak that way, and their schools do a lot of things to just make them aware that this is the thing. So you see a 5th and 6th grade school kid is also doing these things just because he thinks that foreign policy matters a lot to me. It's very touched with my heart, and it matters to me a lot, not just to the nations and leaders.
it is clear that Gen Z is not just passively observing the world, but rather we are actively engaging with it and thinking critically about the issues that will shape our future. Thank you, Naman, Vaishnavi, and Abhinandan for joining this discussion and presenting your perspectives. For our listeners, we hope this episode has sparked your interest in foreign policy and the way this generation sees it. The world is interconnected, and what happens globally affects us all. Thank you for watching Sansad TV. Jai Hind.